Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Your Guide to Book Publishing podcast. And as always, before we jump into a very important topic for today, I like to open with a quote from my little book, How to Create Snappy, Sassy, Salty Success for Authors and Writers. And it really does tie in with one of the elements we'll talk about during this session. And it's this: when it comes to designing your book, some people are just the wrong fit. Remove them from your project and your team. If you don't, your book will be a mess and you will be miserable. And I think of the 48 books that I've published, of the 18 that were done with New York before I started my own imprint and press, is there was only two of those 18 that I didn't have to apologize for. That's just something was wrong with them. It just fit. Either the cover was awful, the back cover copy didn't fit, the interior design was yucky, and there was just mistakes that didn't get corrected that were told to get corrected. You know, I've been here and I've done that, because what we're going to be talking about today is mistakes and blunders. And I'm going to base it on my book, which is, I think y'all should have if you don't have it. And it's this one: How to Avoid Book Publishing Blunders. We all have them. We all stumble on them. We all have them thrown to us. We all do them all by ourselves. So I'm going to go through a series, and I've got 200 of them in the book. So most likely this will be a part one and part two, but I'm going to go through a series with things to rectify when it happens. And believe me, you're going to come across these. But I do not know an author who has not started a list with, when talking about publish, next time, or if I had to do it all over again, or if I had only stopped working with this person when I knew it wasn't right. We all have had them. And I know I've told this story before, when I had hired an illustrator, paid down a reasonable size deposit for one of my books, to do the cover art that I wanted. And I wanted that some little arts that I was going to drop in the interior. And this was a workbook. And a month went by and nothing came, and I started getting antsy. I needed to see something. Give me a sample. What are you thinking? And we had a 2-hour meeting with my book designer of what we were looking for in that. And what came back was so remote from that conversation, that did not fit the elements of the book, that I knew it was the wrong fit. Now, I could continue on to try to fix it, to make it right, but I knew it was the wrong fit. And I reached out to another illustrator who did kiddo books, because I like fun stuff and I would like to have fun stuff in a workbook, which this book was going to be. And I told him the parameters, but I mean, a much shortened, not over a couple of hours, like in a email, like one paragraph. And I just ended it: can you help? Don, can you help? The next morning, and this was like at 11 o'clock at night, the next morning he came back with 4 elements that I knew, whoa, I've got the right fit. So if I had continued on, it would have been so frustrating, exasperating, cost me money. I wouldn't be happy, and I would, it just wouldn't have worked. So I think you just have to pull the plug. When it's time to pull the plug, it's time to pull the plug, and figure out why you're pulling the plug. So it's important for you to figure out what mistakes are in play, what blunders have been made. And this is the place where I would want to know, who's the creator? Is it the person you're trying to interact and hiring? Or could it be you? And sometimes a lot of mistakes come because you're starting for the first time in the author path, and you just have no idea of the overwhelmed journey that's going to be coming to you like a fire hose at different times, of the elements and even the syncing and the timing of some of the elements. And I know that when I get to a certain stage with a book, I will tell the author that I'm working with as the book shepherd. I will tell them it's gonna come like a fire hose at you right now. From getting this and getting this and doing this and doing this. And I just want you to get ready for it. It's coming. And all of them have to be dealt with at once. So it's good when you know what those elements are, but sometimes we just don't know, or something's happened in the writing, it takes a redirect that they're in. When I'm writing fiction, our our books take a redirect. My latest book got so much bigger than what we thought by like 30,000 words. So much bigger because of the elements of the stories that started dropping in that we had to address. It happens. So, but what you need to understand that when you hit mistakes and the blunders, that there's a cost. There could be a financial cost. There could be a time cost. And so you need to be and there could be an emotional cost to it. So you need to really understand that they'll happen. Don't beat yourself up. Just you have to figure out, okay, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do to fix it? Or can I just, okay, let it go and we're just not going to include whatever it was. Those things happen. All right. So with that, I'm going to just start rolling through the book, starting with a variety of them. And I'm going to start with the very first one. I have a program I do called the 7 Sins of Publishing. And one of the sins is not recognizing that this is a business. Now, so are you a hobbyist, or do you really want to have some author success here? Do you want to make it a book success? That's what we want to think about doing. And so the very first one is that what you're doing now is not treated as a business. That from having a bank account for it, as simple as that, or where the deposits go. I think one of the big mistakes is the commingling factor. If you will start off from the get-go, for those of you who are in the very beginning, from the get-go, bravo. That's a bravo. If you're along the way and you've mixed it all up, let's make today the get-go. And get a tax ID number for it separate. That when you eventually put your books up, if you haven't already, and you can certainly change it over onto Amazon and Ingram Spark, that if you're going to do the print on demand method, or if this is going to be what your vehicle for like national distribution, that you'd like to have the tax ID. You want the money to come to an account that is identified. This is what this is for. Now, the other thing is that all your expenses should be coming out of that account on that. So you may be making a loan to the business. We've all done that, and funding, but your tax records, and remember the IRS, as of today, the year 2025, that that you've got 5 years to start showing some cash flow here to try to show it this really profit. They know that small businesses, you're a small business, is going to have some startup expenses. They all do. It's not the typical business that instantly is profitable. So there are costs that you're going to have to this baby. There are going to be editing costs. There'll be educational costs. There'll be design costs. There'll be printing related costs. There you may be going to workshops and classes. There's buying ISBN costs. There are costs, costs, costs. So do understand that in the process as you go along. So to me, publishing has cost. One is the investment that includes your time, your energy, and the money. So I look at these 3 factors. These are costs, and understand what they are. Get some guesstimates in there. And when someone comes to me and says, oh, yes, I'm going to publish my book and I'm going to do everything under $500. And to me, it just screams foolish, foolish. There's all buying one ISBN cost $125, people. Now, do you want to buy one? Nope. You're going to start with 10, and you're going to start with N, which costs $295. And if you contact me, I'll give you a discount code for it. But with that said, there's costs to doing this. So there's some people, are there one book wonders out there? Yeah, there are. There are some people that just, the angels descend, magic hits, everything goes. But for the bulk of us, like 98% of us, we're in for a little bit of a roller coaster ride as we go through this. And just think about that. So please think, you've got a business. What's the business name? Come up with a press name, your imprint name. That's how I would be operating. And that now my publishing company is Mile High Press. Mile High Press for years had its own standalone website, had its own bank accounts. It has its tax ID number. Eventually, I incorporated it and brought it under the umbrella of the Book Shepherd. So it's one of our profit centers. That you want to think of it as a profit center. So it's one of our centers that's where we publish. So everything now comes into that, but we still operate under Mile High Press. It's part of the DBA. All right, so get a tax ID number, create a bank account, start keeping track. And, you may have a spreadsheet, you may use something like Quicken, whatever it is for you to keep track. You may have a shoebox and everything related to it. You've thrown all your expenses and all that into the shoebox. I'm okay with that. Just have a space that whatever you're spending is going so you can easily do the tracking. And then what you're going to do is most likely a Schedule C on your personal return. Should you incorporate? No. You do an LLC? You can, but it's still going to all come in on a Schedule C. And so remember, you've got an office, you've got a phone, I've got Ring cameras, I've got Ring lights, I've got 3 different computers I work on. I've got different chairs I work on. It's all exclusively for the business on it. What is it that you have? Those are deductible. Those become supplies. If you've been around me long enough, I drink a lot of tea. I have certain teas that I only drink when I'm writing. I deduct it. All right. So what is it that fits what you do so you know, and you can take it from there. Now, next thing to do is you need to do your pre-work. So the blunder is you don't do it, right? So what's pre-work? Well, that's getting in your car, mileage here, mileage counts, we have deductibility here, and getting over to a bookstore and checking it out. It could be going to a writing conference. You're doing your research, and there is an absolute line on a Schedule C dealing with this that you can go through that seeing, so what's out there? What are you checking out? And there's just a variety out there that will help you. What you need to think of yourself as you start on this journey is you need to be like a universal sponge, that you need to start figuring, okay, so is this trending and looks like it could stick, or is this maybe just a fad and I don't need to get involved in it on that? So it's just part of the publishing business, and it'll separate you from, I'm serious, I do want to be a successful author, or I'm just going to be a dabbler and a hobbyist, and it really doesn't matter with my time and my energy or kind of the money. I'm just going to kind of do this for fun, right? That's fine. But for those who really see this as maybe this is my next career, let's get started in the very beginning. It's a business. So start doing your pre-work. What are the books like in the bookstore? what it's like in your genre. Go down and pull out the covers and look at them. One of the exercises I do with all my clients is you go to the bookstore. I want you to do a do-si-do around the main tables as there. These are the new books coming in. There's probably a sign. What's new? What's new in historical fiction? What's new in sci-fi? What's new in fantasy? Whatever your genre is, you need to find out what's the current and what's it look like, and just see, what do I like? What don't I like? About covers, about colors, about fonts, about images, about layout, interiors, or something that I like to pick up. One of the first things I love to do working with a new client is we're going to figure out this, cover and put it together so you can dangle it like a carrot in front of you that this is what I'm going to pitch for and go. All right, so the next thing is that what's this thing called a platform? And not even thinking about building it and developing it. All right, so to me, a platform has three elements to it. What's the passion that brings you to this writing party? What's the vision that you've got for your book and for you as the author? And what's your commitment behind it? And that a lot of people will talk about the platform. Oh, it's how many people you have connected with on social media. It's how many emails. No, that comes later. You got to have the vision and the passion and the commitment to start bring that attractor for it on it. But the platform then is where you doing your branding and you start building up. So your platform is the infrastructure, literally, of your building your book house on. So what do you need to have to hold that up, to keep it going, to keep your mojo going on it when you get into that one of the dips of the roller coaster as you're going along? Now, the internet became a game changer 20 years ago. Huge things happened, just like the AI is today. It's a game changer for things that are going on. So where are you in that? What do you know about that? And it boggles my mind when someone calls me and says, "Well, I write longhand." Okay, I understand the power of writing those words. I understand the connection with the heart, but you've got to get them into a Word document. Because when you start the writing, I mean, when you bring it together, maybe you did the whole thing on a yellow pad. That's okay with me. But now we have to type it up, or you hire someone to type it up to get it in the Word document, because the professionals that you are going to be working with will demand it. And when your book is finally all written up, chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter, when it is all written up, it goes to a designer. They want a Word document. So don't play around with other stuff. So if you don't know it, it's a matter of typing, of buying it, of leasing it monthly, whatever you do. We used to all buy the disc and download it. Now it's mostly on an annual subscription, but you have it in play, and it's invaluable that you have. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about, this is a huge mistake I see authors make. And I finally I do a publishing at sea cruise every winter where I take like 20, 25 authors away, and we do workshops on marketing and all kinds of things. And someone said, would you do a workshop on organizing my computer for writing, for publishing? So we did that. I would recommend one of the things you do from the very beginning, because this is where stuff gets all screwed up and mixed up and lost. And you lose a lot of time searching for stuff and redoing things. And that is create a master book folder. A master book folder. That's I don't care if you call it book or you can put the title of your book, but a master folder. Inside that folder, you're going to have other folders. You're going to have a folder, actually a folder I will call final. So when all your final documents are done, You get a final PDF of the book, the final PDF of the book cover. You have your final of your ebook file. This is final. This is where you keep all of the final stuff. This is the stuff that gets uploaded for resale. But now you're going to, I have a working file. I make an old a folder. I make an old working folder. I make an old that when I'm not ready to throw away a document because maybe there's a gem in there, maybe I did a bunch of whacking. I have an old folder that I throw all those files in so I can always go back and find them, but I get them off of my Vision because here's the problem. Too many, I won't say most, but too many authors keep opening up the wrong files and they start working again on them and they're old. They're old. So you want to keep current in your Vision the most recent file. I would put a date on it. I would put your date on it. If you're working with someone, like I work off and on with all my clients, that when I had my fingers on it, it'll have a JB on it, and then it'll have the date. It could be 6/5/25. And then it could say, you know, chapter 1 and maybe a couple of words for what the chapter is, so we know what it is on it. And then it gets sent back to the client. They go through it. They make changes. And guess what they do? They put their initials on front of it, right? Then it comes back to me, and I know that we're working on the same file, and it keeps going back and forth, and we keep altering it. You can also change the date, but the biggest mistakes happen is when they pick up the wrong file again because it was there. It looks the same, but it's not. It's had tweaks on it somewhere interiorly. So on this book folder, I have a old folder within it. I have a working folder. I have a clean folder. When we're done, because it's not been finalized, it hasn't gone to the final form to a designer, I have a clean folder that when we're done working with a chapter or a section of the book, it gets moved to there out of our site. We've done enough tweaking on it. We're ready for maybe an outside editor now to take over the next step before we go to layout. Okay, so you do that. I always have a marketing folder. If there's going to be any illustrations, any art of any sort, I have an art folder. So those are a few. I mean, you'll come up with some others, but these are things that you're going to have to do. And if you will make that kind of, let's start here, you will save a lot of time and energy. All right, next mistake is not having a plan. So what's your plan? What's your publishing plan? And have you thought about writing it up? So your plan should be kind of your formula on how you want to succeed. And I like to do it in writing with it. And I think it, and the end result is to have a book in hand. But what are the things in the plan that you need to get to have the book in the plan? So that's one of the things that you want to create. What's your game plan? If this is not a template from someone else, it's how you're going to go about writing. Maybe you're going to do a retreat. I'm one of these people. I'm a binge writer. I write every day, but I'm writing for other people, or I could be writing a bunch of blogs, or I could be writing marketing copy for something. I'm writing every day. I'm not necessarily working on my book every day. I'm working on other people's books. So a plan for me is I gather everything up. That would be on my plan. I would block out a date. I would make a date with myself. And I sometimes get on a cruise for a week and I can bang out an entire draft of a book in a week because I'm so focused and I have all my material. I'm not doing anything else. The plan was to get away so I could be focused. Because when I'm here in the office, the phone rings, everyone's after me, life happens. Right. Next mistake that we see is that whatever your goals are to get to your having your book in hand, there is not a stepping stone on getting there. How are you going to do the stepping stone? So one of the things that, if you came in my office, you go, oh my God, There's paper here. There's paper. Yep, because I have research. And for me, I'm one of these people, because I know myself fairly well after all these years, that sometimes my Thursday brain does not tell the Saturday brain what I did with something, where I filed it away, if I put it away, which place I filed it in. So you can say, well, you should always have the same file place. Oh, that sounds like such a good idea. My brain doesn't work that way. So I have, I have things, I have a chair, I put things on, important in my desk, I put things on. I know where to go and I can find it. That's where they go until they get done with. Then they can go in to the old file. We are done. So think about what you need to do to declutter. And I'm not talking about house cleaning. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about decluttering your space so you have stuff around you that is your encourager. Like, I will always have iced tea. Okay. So I will always have iced tea around me when I'm working and doing that. That's part of my MO. I have that. I will have a few of my books around because I'm pulling for it. If I'm doing a specific project on something, whatever research that is gone with that, that will be literally within an arm's length so I can get to it. And now I have pencils, certain pencils I like to use. That when I'm making notes, I always have note paper, I have sticky notes. Those are all in play. That's how I have to get started. You may be totally different. You may have toys around, fine with me. But what you want to do is get the stuff out of the way that's not going to help you move. You may have music you like to listen to. That works just fine as you go forward. So you can have that. So those are some of the elements in getting set this up as a business, recognizing it as business, setting up your financials so you're in order for when it starts happening, because you're going to be starting to spend money long before you see any book sales come in. So you want to do that. All right, the next thing is where people get really zapped and taken advantage of is what I call publishing predators. People that really take advantage of you and can take you down a whole another level that is truly, truly stunning. The damage that can be done. And I've always said publishing predators will love you until the credit limit runs out on your credit card. So who are these people? Well, what I write in the Blunders book is this. There's the shady individuals and companies who service the publishing needs and wants of authors. Ever and they are breeding since self-publishing kicked off. There is just a whole ream of them out there. The savvy art authors will start to recognize that there are red flags to these people, and recognize the lures that are thrown out. So what's really important for you is to start learning how to check them out. And one of the places I've always found a lot of predators is at publishing pitch fests. And this is where they would get a group of people, they would have panels, they would have people pitching their wares at the end of their presentation to rope you in, to buy it, sometimes for mega thousands of dollars. So Pitch Fest is typically run by one person, and the deal that they have with their speakers who have products that they sell is that anything that gets sold or committed or contracted at the Pitch Fest, the person who is the organizer gets half. That's kind of very typical of what goes on. So my recommendation to you is that, number one, never, ever, ever buy anything with a check or cash. This is when you use your credit card. Because if you land in something that has been misrepresented, and it happens a lot, that you can pull the misrepresented card and you contact that credit card company immediately and saying, let them know that the product was misrepresented, it's faulty, they haven't delivered. and you want to claim default, and they will put a stop on it. They will verify, they will go out and check, and come back to that. So always use, but a lot of these things are hypes. They're, oh my God, you get so excited. It's amazing. It's a hype. So if you go to a pitch fest, go with a budget in mind. I mean, I'm really thinking because you're there to buy. And don't let yourself get caught in. Think about it and come back to it later, right? Now, the next one is, hey, don't get duped by self-publishing companies. They're out there. They're all over the place. And I see them saying, hey, by the time you're done, your total cost will be 597 or 497. They seem to end in seven, on that. Publishing costs far more than that. So if you're looking for a book of quality, you really want a book of quality, and I don't care if it's an ebook or print. Ebooks do not have to be ugly. You can do fabulous color in an ebook, and it doesn't cost a nickel more to have color versus black in an ebook. Did you know that? Right. So you can do that. Editing costs money, and don't sidestep it. This is one of the big mistakes. Another sin, not editing. Well, I edited, or my sister edited it for me, or my best friend loves to read a lot, and she said she would read it and do the editing for. No, no, no. You want someone who this is what they do. They are editors. And then designers. How many books have they designed? Have you looked at their books? Do they get your attention? It's really important to know today that the last thing I want to write, I did this with a client just not too long ago. He has a very complicated book. He has illustrations in it, and there are certainly books out there. And I said, let's just go up on Amazon. Let's take a break. We've been working hard for an hour. Let's take a break and let's go check out what comparable books look like. What are they selling for? So we went price checking and looking like it. And a lot of them have, the ability to see a sample. It used to be called look inside, but to see the sample. I think Ingram Spark, when you sign up with them, they still call it look inside. Amazon calls it sample. But you want to get in to see. And he was stunned on how ugly the books were. I'm talking, they were just line after line after line after line after line of just black text. There was no eyeball break. There are so many things that you can do, your book designer, the interior designer can do to give eyeball break, from call outs to pull outs to using bullet points, especially in nonfiction books, to really do things that make things that the reader stops and pauses a little bit and takes a break. So and you know what? It costs money to do that. The thing is, you need to get educated on that, with that. Now, the other thing is with contracts, a lot of people work with a contract or agreement. I call mine an agreement. And you go through these things. And so, what's it say? What are they going to do? Is it done in phases? Is there a checkpoint? There's interacting. What is being said on that? And the reality is that a lot of it gets missed. And then some people give a lot more, deliver far more than what they said in their agreement they're going to do. No, which is what I like to do. But you need to check out what this contract says. And you need to see is, especially when there are deposits going on, how are they held? Can the contract get canceled? Who gets to cancel? The last thing, and this is especially if you get involved with a hybrid publisher or a traditional publisher, you want to make sure there's an escape clause. There's a termination clause. The last thing you want to see that this contract can be terminated if mutually agreed upon. If you want out of a contract, a lot of times it's not mutually agreed. So you need to make sure that you know what you're signing. I had to give a bad news to someone who signed with a hybrid contract. There was no termination. No termination clause on it. She was stuck. And I said, well, here's what, if you're really unhappy on it, with many things she was unhappy about, you might want to consider doing a start over. You're talking new illustrations. It's your story. The copyright is in your name, but you're going to have to start over with new ISBNs, new this. You can keep your title, but it's going to be published by a different animal. And you don't want to say exclusive. They have the exclusive right to your book. Okay. So be careful with that. You've got to be careful. Some of the come on lawns you see with the predators is they, you'll get, we'll give you national distribution. That's so easy. That's like, closing your eyes and blinking them. That when you're on Amazon, it's national, international. When you're on KDP, you're out to national bookstores. That's no exclusive thing in that where you are. So what you got to be careful is don't get duped. Another red flag is they say, "Oh, mistake. If it's the lure." Well, we're your doorway to traditional publishing. A lot of publishers have realized over this last decade how profitable self-publishing is. Independent publishers, self-publishers are outselling more books than the traditional publishers. So they're creating branches and arms for self-publishing. And one of the lures to sign up with them is that we're the gateway, that our editors will see your books. Fat chance on doing that. So you want to be careful of that. Now, you need to check out reputations. This is another boo-boo that people just, no, they're so excited, they just jump in. This is where you need to go to the internet. And I've always said this is so easy. The writer beware. There's a couple of resources I think that are excellent websites like Writer Beware. David Gaughran's, and his name is spelled Gaughran. David Gaughran's blogs are excellent. The Alliance of Independent Authors is an excellent resource to go to on checking reputations. Literally, they have blacklists that you can go. You can also do this yourself. Next one is that tip that you can go in, just go to the Google, put in the name of the person or the company, and just put problems, complaints after each one. You have to do this multiple times. Problems, complaints, scams, lawsuits, ripoffs. And read way down. You have to go past often page 1 of Google because that's where they're going to show up. So predators are in your midst, and I just want you to be careful of that as you go along. And for a couple of websites I've mentioned, you can go to ripoffreport.com, you can go to writerbeware.com, you can go to absolutewrite.com/forums, and try them that way because there's the resources that you would go to. Now, contracts, another huge mistake. Now, this is if you decide and you get offered a contract by a traditional publisher, I would certainly recommend you have an attorney to take a peek and look at it. Make sure that there is a reversion of rights clause, and that means when your book goes out of print or is deemed out of print by the publisher, that you are the first person that gets the option to get any remainder stock. You can buy it, but all rights will also revert back to you. You want that clause in there. Those clauses are disappearing on them. And then you also want to say, when the contract's over, which with print on demand, you could go on in perpetuity because one book at a time. So I would have a clause in there that your book is considered out of print with that publisher if it sells less than, for example, 200 print copies a year. And that way, and then you've got to see your royalties are going to have to show that, and you're going to have to be paid on that. And so that's the reversions of rights is what you want, and you want to have a termination clause, and you want to have a clause in there that you get first option for any if a contract ends for any remainder books. And I had a great thing happen to me one time for a remainder of rights that a publishing company that I was with, a traditional publisher, merged, and they had like, it was like Noah's Ark. There was a gazillion of multiple kinds. So one of my book had done okay, but it wasn't, the lead book. And so they reverted the rights back to me, and they gave me when I didn't know it, they just nice guys. They offered me the remaining it was like 900 and something books that they had in stock, and they offered them to me at 85 cents each. I bought them all. And I started selling those books myself. And I realized they were underselling them. They were underselling them by at least $5. All of a sudden, my little $10 book I am selling for $15, and I have 900 of them. I sold them all out, right? And I bought them for 85 cents. So that's what the reversion of not only rights, but the reversion of inventory. You get the first option on it, and you don't want that. Next thing is a lot of authors sign stuff, they agree to stuff, and they don't know what they've done because they're so excited to have the contract. Don't sign anything unless you truly understand that. And you really want to kind of ask, what other books have you published? And you can track down the author. Ask the question, would you use this person again? Would you publish with this company again? What worked? What didn't work? Next boo-boo. It deals with lyrics and music. Don't write unless you have written permission from the owner of lyrics to include them in your book. And they're trackable. There are people who can track down people who own. You can start yourself. Do a search. Who owns the lyric rights to blah, blah, blah song? I had a client who wanted to use he was in horrible, horrible business situation. And he was always waiting for the Monday when the check was supposed to come in. And when he did his biography, he wanted to use the lyrics from the Mamas and Papas Monday, Monday. I was able to track down, they were owned by somebody in Iowa. And I showed them how we wanted to use the lyrics in the chapter, and we sent it to them in it. They approved it, and we had permission to print up to 10,000 copies using the lyrics, that's one section of lyrics in Monday, Monday, for $125. You have to do the acts. Otherwise, you cannot use them. You can cite and reference the title. You can create a narrative. Every time I was in this situation, I heard, the music from Monday, Monday, right? That you could do without permission, but don't do it without it. Otherwise, you're in trouble, right? So before you sign anything, don't sign stuff because your ego is so excited that you've got it. Make sure you run it by someone that they're not crooks, because they're out there. There's a lot of them. They're rip-off items. Fraud was another word you would use by someone's name. And realize that these people do pop up again. They do pop up with new names. And they go back in business because this is what they know how to run it and make it work on that. All right, so it's important for you to know the difference when signing it, that especially with a hybrid or another self-publishing company, who owns the files if you terminate. If they've designed them, I'm going to tell you most likely they own them. That means if you decide to go someplace else and print, you've got to do a new layout. And that's okay, probably will be better. but it's important to know who owns your files on this as you go along. All right, so get that very clearly in writing. And you want to know who owns the native files. A lot of times, the designer will own the native files. So you need to have in writing that they can't be used for anyone else in those areas. Know the difference. Next up is knowing the difference between exclusive and non-exclusive contracts. That exclusive means that they've got full control. Non-exclusive is you're still in play and you can go out and offer it to something else. These are your rights. Remember, your words matter. You want to give them to someone exclusive that only they can use them. And typically with a traditional publisher, you give them this exclusive worldwide rights to publish your book until it terminates, right? That's why it's important to get that clause in there, because you may want to go someplace else. And listen, this has been one of my biggest mistakes. I remember my agent telling me, and I had a well-known agency name representing me years ago, and they said, your publisher's a crook. And I remember saying, well, you got me into this, get me out of it. And they said, well, if you decide to sue, we'll certainly, testify to support you. And I get, oh, for God's sakes. And so what I learned is how to do the rewrite, how to take my original work, rewrite it, do the rewrites, and come out with a new book. And that's what I did. But it took me a while. I was in pain for a long time. Right. So next up is you really need to know what's in your contract. And it may not be what the provider told you on the phone when you were being seduced, when you were being pitched to do that. So that's why you really have to make sure you read everything and you ask until there's clarity before you sign it and say, okay, it's a go. All right, so let's transition into we talked about the system for your computer a little bit, but how about you? When you rewrite, what do you do to clear up that folder on that and move it? And do yourself, learn how to delete. If there's a nugget in there, you're going to save that, but you need to save it off from your ongoing working file. Now, another mistake is, especially when you're writing how-to books, when you're writing nonfiction, there is that passive voice that's so easily to come through that people will write in the we and the us. No, when you are writing for you. You're writing to the you of it. So this is you and me. I'm writing for you. So you use the you word. And it's hard to break. I know it's hard to break, but that's something that you want to do. Understand that there are times where there's ellipses, there's em dashes, and there's en dashes. All right, and then there is the hyphen. Some, hyphen like self-improvement, self-hyphen improvement on that. But your en dash is about as wide. You know the difference. There's a size. So if you look on your Word doc or we used to say typewriter, but just in your Word document, the en dash is the width of the letter N. Okay, an M dash spelled EM is the width of the M as in Mary on that. Now, I love to use em dashes, and it kind of is a way to I write blunt. I'm a blunt writer, and when my nonfiction, and I would make a statement, and I might want to do an add-on. I would maybe add on an em dash, and it could be just one or two words, and then I have another em dash and continue. So it's a break in the sentence, but now we are accenting phrase or a word within it. When it comes to an ellipse, the ellipse like ... I also like to use ellipses. Now, the Chicago Manual says that you're not supposed to use any space. You go to a word, you finish your word that could say tip, maybe, tip, dot, 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 and then you add your tip on that, and there's no spacing. You know, I violate it because to me, an ellipse is a pause, and I want people to chew on it just a tad, and then continue on with that. So those three, the N dash, the M dash, the ellipse, all will become part of your writing as you go back and forth. And let me, before I leave the N dash, which is EN, spelled EM versus EM, is it looks, it's a little bit bigger than the hyphen, but it's something where you would have that like between years, 2001 to 2002, for example, or pages 67 to 73. That would be an N dash, but the M dash is a little bit different. For example, oh, I have an example of the book. I wrote, against all odds, comma, Martha M dash, the unluckiest woman in love, M dash, discovered the love of her life. Okay, so I've paused it. I'm making a statement to get your attention and continue on with that as we go through it. That I'm for your marketing, that I love the word cheeky. I'm not into political, I've never been into political correctness. I love cheeky, and that think headlines. So sometimes headlines you'll be using in the text of your writing within your book. Otherwise, you will be using headlines on marketing copy to get attention in there. But 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 let things pop a little bit on that. And one of the ones I always look for emotional pop. So a tool that I love to use is something called AM Institute, Apple Mary Institute. And Apple Mary Institute, AM Institute, created by the American Marketing Institute, is a great emotional, emphatic, spiritual rating. You can put in a phrase or a title to see how it pops. And if you can get a score, anytime you can go over 30, that's a home run for you. So take advantage of that. It's you want stuff to have an emotional pull. All right, so the last little tip, because my gosh, we're out of time. So we're gonna, part two will come up with a whole bunch more. But the last time is there is the word called repurpose. And I want you to think about doing things over and over again, and that reuse it. So there are things that you've written, and you can do with tweaks and twists and bring it back again. Now that could be articles you written, or maybe you wrote something that would be perfect to include in a chapter in your book. Then an element you have, that's a repurpose, and it's a gold mine of your content that you can get out there and create and bring it about. It can be used in blogging. You could like, for example, you've written this really, God, this snappy dialogue maybe that you could go on, take your phone and make an video clip, or you could just do an audio clip. Audio clips work quite well. There are tools out there that you could create to use, and an audio boom account that you could do that. But YouTube, you could do a video clip. We do this with our podcasts. We'll take sections and we'll make little video clips, and we can repurpose that and go out. That's the way you can respread who and what you are and what you're about. And that's huge. All right, when we come back, we're going to come back with part two with lots more of mistakes and blunders to avoid, to enhance and grow your author success, because that is what it's about. That's what I want for you. But to come back and do that, if you can avoid half of some of the stuff I've told you, which should all be easy for you to do, frankly, that half of it, you will save so much time, so much energy, and oh my gosh, so much money. I'm Judith Briles. We'll be back with you with part 2 next week.